14-year-old Natasha Ann Ryan vanished in 1998. Authorities believe that she was a victim of a serial killer, but shockingly, 5 years later, she turned up alive and went to his murder trial. Natasha had run away before, so when the troubled teen disappeared from her school in Australia in August 98, her parents believed she would eventually come home. But this time, months had passed and she was nowhere to be found. Then, as other women and girls began to go missing in the area, fears for her safety increased, and police began to suspect she may have been another victim of Australian serial killer Leonard Fraser. Natasha was born in 1984 and grew up in Rockhampton, Queensland, a city of 68,000 people. Everyone knew everyone's business. When she was a child, her father gave her the affectionate nickname of Grasshopper. But by her teens, she lived with her mother in North Rockhampton. Her parents had divorced and her father had remarried and moved to another Queensland city over 3 hours away. At this point, she began to experiment with drugs and attempted suicide, developing a fondness for running away, all by the age of 14. She was also seeing a 21-year-old man named Scott Black. On one occasion, in July of 98, she ran away while out walking the family dog. Police later found her that week at an outdoor music venue in Rockhampton and soon discovered she'd been staying in a hotel with Scott. Police initially charged Scott with abduction, a charge that was eventually dropped, though he was later fined for obstructing the investigation. But this didn't stop her from running away again. On the morning of August 31st, 98, her mother dropped her off at Northampton State High. At some point that day, she vanished. It would be another 5 years before she was seen again. Knowing her history of running away, the police believed they would find her again soon enough. But as the months passed, hope that she would be found alive was lowering when 3 women between the ages of 19 and 39, as well as a 9-year-old girl, went missing. Eventually, they would be the confirmed victims of serial killer Leonard Fraser, described as a sexual predator of the worst kind and by police psychologists as a classical psychopath. He was a convicted rapist who, upon his release in 1997 from prison, continued on his path to rape more women. On April 22, 1999, he raped and murdered 9-year-old Clara Steinhardt after stalking her on her walk home from school. This crime landed him again in prison, and though police were convinced of all the local disappearances were connected, he initially denied that he murdered Natasha Ryan. Investigators soon persuaded another inmate to elicit a confession out of him, and eventually he admitted to murdering all 5 victims, including Natasha. He claimed he had met her at a movie theatre and, after offering her a ride home, attacked her in his car and hid her body in a pond. Everyone believed Leonard, and her family held a memorial service for her in 2001 on her 17th birthday. But although Leonard was able to show police where he'd hidden the remains of the other victims, Natasha's body was never found. While her family searched and searched for her, she was alive and well, hiding out with her boyfriend Scott Black in different local houses, the last one only a few minutes away from her mother's house in North Rockhampton. He worked as a milkman at a dairy factory, and his colleagues had no idea he was harbouring Natasha. By all accounts, he appeared to be living alone. Only his laundry ever appeared on the clothing line outside, and whenever he received visitors, she would hide in a bedroom cupboard until they were gone. Most of the time, though, she moved about the house freely with the curtains drawn. She seemed content to live out most of her teenage years in a darkened home, cooking, reading, sewing and surfing the web. In almost 5 years, she only went outside a handful of times to move houses or to go to a local beach at night. But 2003, it seems the fate of the man accused of her murder may have been weighing on her mind. About 3 weeks before his trial, it's believed Natasha contacted the helpline of Children's Counselling Services. Using the name Sally, she told a counsellor that she was a runaway, that she was living with her boyfriend, and that a man was about to go on trial for her murder. On April 2, 2003, the counsellor anonymously relayed her message to the police, but the officer on duty was unable to trace the call. Shortly afterward, the Rockhampton police received an anonymous letter with an enclosed phone number claiming she was alive and well. On the evening of April 10, 2003, police officers forced entry into a house on Mills Avenue in North Rockhampton. There, they found the girl who was supposed to be dead, hiding in the bedroom cupboard, ghostly pale from her years hiding indoors without any exposure to the sunlight. According to CBS News, it was the 12th day of Leonard's trial when a prosecutor received a phone call from the police that Natasha Ryan was alive. The prosecutor rushed through the courtroom to find her father, Robert Ryan, and told him the news that his daughter had been found. When Robert heard this, he initially assumed it meant that the police had found her body, and he almost collapsed when he heard that she was in fact alive. He was instructed to call the police station to confirm that it was his daughter, and when he did, he asked the woman who came on the line for the nickname he'd given her as a child to ensure he wasn't dealing with an imposter. "Dad, it's me, Grasshopper, and I love you and I'm sorry," she said. Her reunion with her mother Jenny Ryan was less pleasant. She was furious that Natasha had led her to believe that she was dead for all these years, all while living less than a mile away. She told CBS, "I hated her. I could have grabbed her and just shook the hell out of her. But when I seen her, you forget all that." Then Natasha appeared in court at her own murder trial, and to the public it seemed as if the now 18-year-old had come back from the dead. She testified that she had not in fact been murdered by Leonard Fraser. The court deemed that Leonard was not guilty of murdering Natasha. Still, he was found guilty of committing the other murders he'd been charged with and was sentenced to life in prison. But now it was time for Natasha to face her own trials. While the world was happy that she was alive, a lot of the responses of her sudden appearance was clear outrage, wondering how she could have put her loved ones through years and years of suffering by allowing them to believe that she had been murdered. In 2005, The Guardian reported that Scott Black had received 1 year in prison for perjury after falsely claiming to police that he didn't know where she was. Even though she was 14 years old at the time of her running away and hiding with Scott, surely there would be more charges to that, such as grooming, but apparently not. In 2006, she was found guilty of creating a false police investigation. She was fined $4,000 and ordered to pay $16,000 towards the cost of the investigation, but Natasha was profiting off of the publicity. She had a publicist and she made up years of lost income by selling her story to Australian version of 60 Minutes for 120,000 Australian dollars. In the end, she and Scott ended up getting married in 2008 and sold the news of their wedding to Women's Day for an addition of $200,000. They currently have 4 children. She was asked by the police why she didn't come out sooner, especially when people thought she had been murdered, and she said the lie had become too big.